Welcome, Metallurgist, to another episode of the Heavy Metallurgy Album Club. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Marty. It's good to see all of you. Hope you're all doing well. I've had a good week so far. And I'm joined tonight. We're 3/4 of the album club. We're missing Kellen. Kellen is out on official family business, so hope he's having a great time visiting family. Cheers to you, Kellen. And Jim, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. It's I've been a good short week. I was out of town for a race over the weekend for a few days. So that was fun. So it's good to be back home and chilling. For what's spinning, I've got the Ludicra. This is a repress of Tenets put out by Nameless Grave. They've done a great job on it, man. I like it. It's got a light emboss of like the song titles and on the band name here. So if I get it in the light, I really like the job they did on this. Pressed to 45 RPM. Just super nice, cool insert. And Cosmo Lee has a write up of his experience of the band in here. It talks about every song, and so yeah, there's. This was definitely worth it. If you guys like Ludicra, I'd recommend this. This is a great pressing. Moving on, Mr. Marty's label here. We got the Aham Kara here, Hero of the Lost. Some really great somber melodies, really thick guitar sound on here, contrasted with Austin's drumming, which is frantic and technical as always. But it's cool. It's a cool contrast because it sounds like he's playing in like another room and like the guitars are in one room. So really interesting production on this. Killer, just throat tearing vocals and the synthesizers by Michael's wife or the keys are really amazing and lush sounding. So highly recommend. This will be on my end of year list. Great job, Marty, putting this one out.
Glad you like it. Great album. Great band.
Love it. It's amazing. Just like the first one. The first one was great too.
Yep.
So this one, I got a question that I want to know what everybody thinks in the chat. So, okay, a little bit of context. I ordered this from Discogs, used original press, but it said in the listing that it didn't have the original jacket, but in the picture though it had the jacket. So I was like, that's weird. It showed a picture of the jacket and the inserts and all that kind of stuff, the vinyl. And so I thought, well, maybe he misspoke. Maybe he means like the inner jacket, around the vinyl. But I get it, even though there's a picture of the jacket. It even had like a little hole punch in the top right. But I get it. And it goes like this. So, the vinyl's in great shape. It's, Agent Steel. This is Unstoppable Force. Pretty excited to actually, have this as the first, vinyl of Agent Steel I've ever had. So my question is this, like, okay, did I not do my due diligence? Should I have clarified that before I ordered this? Or do you guys think this is BS and I should contact the seller? I'm curious to know what everyone thinks. I want to hear everyone's opinion. Yeah.
So he listed it was the jacket was
the original. It said jacket? in the text of the listing, it said that the original jacket's missing, but it had pictures of it in the jacket. So I thought it was like, well, maybe he just meant the inner jacket, the white around the vinyl, but no, he meant the outer. so I'm just wondering, like, do I take? Do I just like eat this one and say, oh, well, cool, whatever, or do I contact the seller? I want to know what everyone thinks. Yeah.
Sounds like a gray area.
That's a gray area because, he did state that there was no jacket.
Yep.
But then it's deceptive putting up pictures of a jacket when there isn't one.
Which,
it's...
I think both people would have, a leg to stand on. Whereas, you could argue that he was definitely leading you along a little bit.
It's almost like, oh, this is, if there was a jacket, this is what it would look like, type of thing. Which
he
could have put in there, put a picture of a jacket in the picture just for Discogs and to show people what record they're buying. That would have been one step further, I guess, for me. Were they pics he sent or ones for the disc Discogs version.
They were on the ad, the ad, but I mean, they were of this record though, because like the insert looks identical. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe it's just a coincidence that it is something different, but they were on his ad though, clicking through. So
yeah, James says if he didn't put up a picture of a jacket, would you have still bought it?
No.
The price that you paid. Oh shit!
No. I wanted the cover, man, for sure.
I would have read that no jacket before I read, or I don't know, but still a gray area. It's lame. It's a bummer. I mean, it's conflicting.
Yeah,
I mean, you could write to the guy, say, "Hey, look, man, I read there was no jacket, but then the picture kind of confused me a bit, so I thought maybe you meant the inner jacket." Kind of see what he says, type of thing.
That's what I would do. I actually thought you were talking about the inner jacket as well.
Yeah.
Very big difference between the cover of the album.
Yeah, since there was a picture,
I would mention it to him.
Yeah, I would state it like that, because conflicting.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks everybody in the chat. I really appreciate your feedback. I am reading as you guys posted that stuff, and I'll take all that consideration. I think I will just reach out to him, just let him know what's up, and we can kind of take it from there. If he's like, whatever, too bad, no big the important thing is the music, of course, and
yeah, still it's a bummer to slide that on your shelf, and it's like, fuck, because you're gonna have to buy it again. You're gonna want to have it with the goddamn jacket,
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see how it goes. Thanks, everyone.
Mm-hmm. All right, Logan, good to see you. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Late dinner, so if you see me scarfing down some chili in between shots, apologies, but everything's going well on the metal front. Metallurgy related stuff. The Napalm stream you guys did on Friday was killer. I watched it over the weekend. I enjoyed the commentary on all the eras that I had not really checked out, like the 90s stuff. That was all kind of new for me. The stuff that I'm most familiar with was the 2012 album Utilitarian Onward, and this one is my favorite. And Marty, I think you did a good job of summarizing it for sure. Maybe want to spin it again. So I've been listening to some Napalm Death, this, and of course, Scum and Harmony and Corruption made the list too, which I was surprised with the takes on Harmony and Corruption. It made sense to hear like it wasn't as high up as I thought it was going to be. I definitely did not know that there was as much drama in the studio around it, but all love for modern Napalm Death too. And then outside of that, I did a video/stream on my channel finally this past Sunday. It's Acid Bath again. I promise this will be the last time I talk.
I started watching it. I got about a half hour in. I'm like, why am I watching this? I just don't. Yeah. Other than I like Logan, I don't care for Acid. I don't. You know what? It's funny. The show you were at, someone posted the whole show. I watched about half of it, and they sounded really good. They sounded really. I was impressed.
Okay, wow.
A huge stage, a lot of people there. People seemed to be, pretty much swooning over the whole thing. It was cool. It was cool to see the show. I watched about half of it, and made me appreciate them a bit more. So
half of a show and 30 minutes into the live stream. That's more than I would have guessed. So appreciate it. Not going to show a Dax Riggs or Acid Bath related thing, but the other half of Acid Bath, Sammy, got Goat Whore. So I've been spinning some Goat Whore too, just in preparation. I do talk about all of the different side projects from Acid Bath in my stream. For anyone who's interested, it's up on my channel. This is probably my favorite Goat Whore album, Constricting Rage of the Merciless. To me, this is just the most well-balanced of their sound and also contains a bit more experimentation. Goat Whore, they never try to rock the boat, upset the apple cart. They always play pretty straight and narrow, but on this one, there's some cool, like, doom elements and just their best riffs, I think. So that one. And then I believe it's my pick tonight. So I was messing around with some options. I was thinking maybe some death metal. I decided not to go with this one, but still spun it a bunch. This is Infester, To the Depths and Degradation. You guys know them, West Coast death metal band. This came out in 1992, I believe, or 1994, one of those years. Pretty heavy, dark stuff for sure. Almost too much over the top for its own good at times, but fun spin. And then I wish Kellen were here. He could back me up. When it comes to the other big Canadian, or really the big Canadian thrash band, Voivod, I'm on Team Kellen with Dimension Hatros. So, but still, I was visiting all the Voivod stuff, and I do enjoy their modern output. Like Synchro Anarchy is a great album. I really enjoy this one. The songwriting here is just very. It kind of hooks you. It's adventurous, proggy, but still very memorable. Tracks like Quest for Nothing, Planet Eaters, Mind Clock, so many good ones. So I spun this as well as a bunch of the classics, still trying to wrap my head around it. I think I made some progress with Nothing Face, though. So,
all right. I got to get my chat thing done here. I honestly haven't been listening to a ton of music this week other than homework. Started getting my 2 years late taxes stuff together on Sunday. And so I did that, watched a lot of YouTube, but I did get in. Me and the kids spun Rabbit Don't Come Easy by Halloween this past week. Always a fun car ride. Great album. Stupid cover. And actually inspired by Dead Brain Cells, especially in the bass work department. I ended up throwing this classic on, Tension's Breaking Point. Man, I always loved this record. This is another one of those bands that no one freaking talks about. And they were a great thrash band, kind of pitch singing, pseudo, I don't want to say glam because it isn't really, but he's a good, clean singer. But man, you got Steve Harris bass tone on here. Really good thrashy stuff. Excellent album. But yeah, basically my week has been dominated by these two records. Today we are discussing Dead Brain Cells, the debut, and their follow-up, 1989's Universe. And a little bit of Wikipedia action to drop on you folks. Dead Brain Cells was often abbreviated as DBC, our Canadian thrash metal band that was initially active from 86 to 91, and they have reunited occasionally since the early 2000s, other than playing live relentlessly and a music video for the Genesis Explosion from Universe, receiving considerable airplay on Music Plus. DBC never got the success other thrash bands achieved. The band called it quits in 1991 while working on a third album that never surfaced, but they have since reunited occasionally and have new music in the works. In fact, DBC released their first new songs in 35 years called Pendulum and Sirens on July 2nd, 2024. I just started listening to one of them before the guys jumped in the dugout. So sounds a lot different. Of course, you're missing two original members. They both have passed away. Rest in peace. But yeah, tonight we're talking about two albums. I filled up our plate a bit. Sorry about that. Thankfully, they're not long albums, but let's start out with first impressions. Let's start with you, Logan. I don't know if you've ever heard this band before, but you have two albums to lay down your first impressions on.
Yeah, let's see. I did check out the self-titled from a Heavy Metallurgy episode that you did. I don't remember if it was like a one and done or like a, bands that should have been bigger episode, but you mentioned them and so I was familiar with kind of the sound. And this certainly seems like a Marty thrash pick. Just how I think Jim has a certain style. Marty, you definitely have a certain style of thrash as well. It seems
Jim and I's styles converge often, but
yeah. Oh well, yeah. You seem a bit more like technical oriented though. Like you can get in to that more technical side of things. You pulled that Death Row record, by the way, and that's still
well, I love that record.
That's still a tough nut to crack. And yeah. And this one, thankfully, is not quite like that. It's at least the self-titled Dead Brain Cells is a bit more immediate. It's still very technical in its own right, and jamming a lot in a short amount of time. But I really thought it was quite an immediate album, though. Whereas the Death Row was just like, what the fuck is going on? I could, I will spin it another 10 times and still not have an idea. But with this one, within the first 2 or 3 spins, I kind of got a hang of it. And I like how the songs are just such short, quick bursts of energies and ideas, and they move so effortlessly from one to another. It's kind of like being on a roller coaster a little bit. As soon as you start it, you're just like, in this whirlwind of riffs and just like kind of iconic vocal passages. Like the vocal performance is very prevalent here, and then boom, it's done. So for me, the self-titled one, I had no issue getting into. It was pretty easy. Universe, on the other hand, oh man, that was a trip. That's a journey. It's I mean, quite literally, it's all about the concept, the universe from beginning to end, to the heat death of mankind or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like being lectured by Bill Nye the Science Guy over a thrash, backdrop. And just the vocal approach is different. The approach to the playing style is a lot more in the pocket and like more jazz fusion-y, it feels like. They don't like, there's so many riffs in the self-titled one, and this one there's almost like a lack of riffs, if that makes sense. It's more of like not a lack of, it's just very different riff
Very
styles
different.
to me.
Yeah.
And it gives you whiplash trying to go from one to the other. And I think I tried to change it up so I wouldn't like form a bias towards like the first one. But definitely the first impression, I was like, all about the self-titled. But to be fair, that's an easier one to get in just a couple spins or in a week versus Universe, which, who knows? That might be closer to the Death Row album I was talking about.
Right on. Jim, same for you. How familiar with this band were you going into this week?
I mean, I've always known about DBC. I always saw the covers in the stores when I was growing up. And they were always on my list to check out, but I just never got around to it. And I don't know why, but it never happened. So weirdly, this, to my knowledge, this is the first time I've ever heard them, which is great because I love hearing things from that era and that I haven't discovered yet. A lot of Canadian stuff was just completely off my radar except for Voivod. So it's really cool to hear this. So we're talking, first impressions about both. Like, obviously the first one's a very heavy punk attack. I mean, this, Power and Corruption specifically. I mean, that's just a punk song, with like one metal riff in it, which is great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's awesome. It's powerful. It's, there's great musicianship, great riffs, all of this. I like to get in and the get out. But you know what, man? Universe surprised me, man. I liked it. I liked that whole crazy space vibe, dude. I liked the more progressive styles of the riffs, the like, the odd time signatures here and there, the kind of like the half scales that they would play and then roll those into like, strange tempo changes and stuff. I really enjoyed it. It was and so I'm very torn even now. Like I still haven't decided which one I like better, so, because in their own world, they both rule for their styles, and so what's interesting is I look on Metal Archives and they're very one's 85 and the debut's 85 and Universe is 84. I mean, so I think I'm not the only one that's torn a little bit about this. I know Logan's opinion's pretty clear. And usually I would tell you, like, I'm always for like the more aggressive, you know what I mean? Like, give me the first record. Yeah. And, though I feel myself leaning that way, like, I think what has me lean back again towards Universe is like some of the delivery of the punk vocals, like, gets a little annoying for me, or I feel like he's just spitting the words out, and where I feel like with Universe, there's, even though it's not really singing per se or something like that, the kind of doubled vocal like there is at least intriguing throughout. And I think keeps like the cosmic theme, like, like it kind of, legitimizes it, with the sound and everything. So that's really, the kind of like the deciding factor for me is like, I think like the first album has like the better attack and the riffs, but the vocals can annoy me sometimes. Where the second album, like, the riffs are progressive and super interesting, and I love them, and the vocals don't annoy me. So I I don't know, man. This is going to be a tough one. You picked a good battle, Marty, because I did not. I thought this was going to be a knockout. I was like, I know me. I'm going to like the debut more, and I can't say that. So I'm interested to dive in.
Well, for me, I got Dead Brain Cells on tape from Camelot around the time it came out because it was on Combat, and I had to have everything that came out on Combat that was available to me at the store. And it's one of those handful of albums that I put in the player in the parking lot of Prangies, and this hair in the back of my neck stood up. That album, to this day, it just the only other, Matt, cheers to Matt from Dive Bomb Records for reissuing both of these on CD a year or so ago. I don't know exactly when he did it, but the only other lip service really I've seen internet wise or podcast wise on DBC is the Radical Research. Our friends at Radical Research, they did kind of a similar thing that we're doing here tonight. They kind of beat me to the idea. This has been on my sheet forever, and then they did it. I'm like, oh, but that the debut album is, to this day, I don't ever get tired of it. It's funny, Jim, hearing you call it a straight up punk record. I think the punkest thing about the record is Phil's vocals, because musically, like those bass lines, there's a lot of Steve Harris bass lines. He's a beast.
Just one song. Just one song.
Okay.
Yeah. Just Power and Corruption. That song, I consider to be a punk song. There's one metal riff in it that's super actually headbanger bad, like awesome.
Yeah.
But the other was but yeah, I don't mean to say that the album sounds like.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. Yeah. So I mean, I always thought in my head, there's leanings towards crossover here, but listen to the album a bunch this week and refamiliarizing. It's just like, nah, the crossovers in the vocals a bit, but the riffing and the drum work. I mean, there's speed breaks on here that are damn near blast beats. They're for the year, it's pretty damn quick. And what was his name? Rest in peace, by the way. Jeff St. Loomis. What a great freaking drummer. I mean, he throws some jazz breaks in here and there, which expands upon greatly on the Universe album. But anyway, I devoured this cassette. I listened to it all the time. It's short. I could play it over and over. I love it. I still love it. I'm still not tired of it. I got the week Universe came out. I got it on tape. I was shocked. Let's just put it. I was shocked. I was expecting DBC 0.2 here, but this is one of those records that I had to, I only bought so many albums a month. I spun it over and over and over because I liked it, but it was just so different. It's a much cleaner production, very slick sounding. There's a definite maturity in an upgrade in their musicianship. But I think really the thing that threw me the most was Phil's vocals. Again, it's more of a narration throughout. This is a concept album, like Logan stated, the birth of the universe and the rise and fall of mankind on Earth type of thing, dinosaurs, all that shit. It's a very oh God, the word I'm looking for is escaping me. It's ambitious. It's a very ambitious concept. And the style in which the vocals present it later on, I would feel are genius. It's kind of interesting. You don't ever hear him kind of singing slightly in pitch or speaking slightly in pitch and then a lower register of him talking. And they double it throughout the entire album, other than a couple spots where they just put a lot of reverb on his voice. But it's weird. It's a weird idea. And they lived and died by it for the whole album, which, if you don't like it, it doesn't get better. If you do, if you're okay with it, I mean, it's fine. But man, it was almost like culture shock putting in that second tape. When I got it, I'm like, what the hell happened? What is going on? I just don't get it. But eventually, time, persistence, over and over and over again. I haven't listened to this album in a minute, and putting it on, I'm still singing along with it. I'm like, okay, I have obviously ingested this enough during my formative years that it's still very much a part. But yeah, I mean, it was like night and day, but listening to it back this week, there's still a lot of similar, there's especially the second half of the album still very much sounds like stuff that could have been on the debut. But let's get into my topic tonight. Canada possesses a rich history of unique thrash bands, many of which we have discussed on this show. Yet it seems that even though DBC had all the right tools to lay waste to their peers, they are often left out of the conversation when Canadian metal is discussed. Why do you think this is? Perhaps the atypical nature of Universe only appealed to a diminished number of their fan base, especially with the rise of more extreme metal in the world around, the late 80s. What are your thoughts? This is kind of a whatever question, but I don't want anything too super deep because we have a lot to cover tonight. Logan, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what kind of thrash was Canada really known for outside of course, Voivod and Sacrifice? I mean, were they really known for like the more technical side of stuff? I mean, digging in my mind, I think of more of like the cross between like where thrash and speed metal kind of meets. I mean, you get the Razors and the Exciters, and of course, Anvil. Not really thrash, but I couldn't think of too much else near what DBC is kind of doing,
Mm-hmm.
and especially if you consider them somewhat close to the crossover, which in the musicality and composition, I mentioned that to me, this feels and it flows like a crossover album with just these songs are like one idea to the next. And it's just like bam, bam, bam. I don't know if they necessarily fit in to what Canada was doing at the time. Of course, I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know what was actually the thing, or was what everyone was hyping about with Canada. But I know nowadays, when looking back on it, the bands I mentioned are the ones that I heard the most about. To me, thinking about Canada and this style of like technical metal, especially with what happens on Universe, outside of Voivod is like the early, I guess the originator of this. It's like tech death. Like Canada really comes into their own with this more like technical leaning death metal that starts in like the late 90s or in the mid 90s, I guess. Like I really wonder if bands like let's see, Gorguts, Cryptopsy, Martyr, Oblivion, Quo Vadis, Neuraxis, hell, even like Cataclysm potentially like looked at what DBC were doing and the more technical and kind of out there elements they were bringing into their music for inspiration. Or maybe they really were just like a one-off, writing or trying, mainly being influenced by Voivod. That's what it seems like to me. But yeah, I would just be curious if they had anything to do with this technical death metal that becomes a lot bigger for Canada in the coming decades.
All right, Jim.
That's a really good question,
Oops.
man. Whoop.
Sorry, I got you.
What are you doing? Why?
I thought I moved you over, but I didn't. You're up there now. You're good. Everything's good.
Okay, on my screen I'm still small, but
trust us. You're big.
Okay,
it happens.
Yeah. So great question. I'm not really sure why they weren't more, visible, I guess, for lack of a better word. Because it is super solid. Maybe 87 was a year too late for that just kind of pure punk vocal style. I don't know. Maybe if it come out like in 85 or something, it would have been a little more palatable. That's kind of my first thought. Though it doesn't bother me. It just like when he's just kind of spitting the vocal, like that's the only time it bothers me. I didn't mean to say like it bothers me the whole time, but when he's going really fast, I can sometimes get in the way of the wrist for me. But so maybe with it like being like not so much of a typical thrash vocal, maybe that was part of it. But the wrists are there, and and even though I like the kind of the weird doubling vocal on the second album, maybe could have turned people off, and definitely by 89, the guttural voices were becoming more and more prominent. Death metal, of course, but also even in thrash, like people, people were starting to go for that lower register. Not so much kind of like something that's sort of like effects ridden, as the delivery is on Universe. So, I would attribute it, to the vocals, because to your point, Marty, like the drums are super solid. Guy's a really great drummer, has really cool, unique ideas. Great fill work, great cymbal work. the bass is just, amazing. It's a really great bass sound. It's punchy. It makes its way through. He's all over the neck on that thing. The guitar playing is really cool. I love the melody lines they do throughout, on both records.
Yeah.
And kind of they're kind of some surprising moments of melody here in the midst of just like the pure thrash assault. So it's not an instrument thing. I don't think you could even say like, well, maybe it has to do with the guitar sound being a little bit thinner than most thrash albums of the era.
Pretty dry. Pretty dry. The second one is particular.
Yeah, very dry. There's not a lot of gain there. When they do down picking, there's not like a lot of crunch. It sounds, I don't want to say brittle. I mean, it still sounds good to me, but more of a kind of a single coil sound than a a humbucker or a double coil, and maybe that was it, but then again, like look at Game Over. It came out in '86, Nuclear Assault. I mean, that guitar sound was just as like super thin and just as single coil sounding. And introduced Nuclear Assault to the world, and they're, obviously in my world anyway, they're kind of like one of the first things you think of outside of the big four. But so yeah, it's a mystery. You're definitely come up with some challenges tonight, Marty. Like, for me, like, which album do I like better? Like why weren't they more well known? These are great thoughts and great ideas to kind of ponder and to put head to head to try to figure out what's going on. But the only thing I can think of is maybe the vocals on both records for completely different reasons may have been hard to take, because I think musically it really doesn't make sense to me, like why they didn't push through a little further than they did.
Yeah, I mean, they're on the right label for the time. They really were. I mean, Combat, a lot of, of course, Combat put out some second-rate thrash too, of course, but I don't know. I think for me, thinking about this, it's got to be, before we went into this week, like I said, it's been a minute. Whenever I listen to this band, I listen to the debut. I just do. I've got that, goosebump connection, and like same with Holy Terror. I will always worship shit like that. But there was always more. There's obvious differences between the albums, but they just seem like completely different albums in my mind leading up to this week. Listening to it again, there's a lot of similarities. There you could tell it's the same band. Honestly, I think it was the vocals, because really that doubling the vocals the way they did, that narration thing, it is different. It's really cool. It's never, I don't know, has anybody else done this before? I have no idea. I have not heard anything like it. And it really makes the album, like it or not, it makes the album stand alone different. And it's such a clean sound. It might have been, and I would think also one thing, the big difference between the two is Universe is a smarter album. It's like big brain metal type stuff. I mean, people typically that like more challenging, advanced music, this is here. They up their game. They're more technically advanced. The bass steps back a bit, where the bass is very much a focal point. I think on the debut, on Universe, it's more step back and subdued. It's just a slicker, everything about it is slick. It's more, there's more jazz elements. There's more playing with different time signatures. They developed a lot over a couple of years span musically. So I think for a genre that, or, a fan base that really loves the thrash, maybe a little bit of crossover, this is starting to move into more of a higher brow level of thrash, where not as many people glom onto that. And I think the vocals are a big part of that as well. So yeah, really, that to me is the main reason. It's still a great record. You can't take much away from that. But let's discuss musicality and composition of Dead Brain Cells and Universe. Logan, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Real quick with your question, maybe there was a line, as you said, and they crossed it, and because they didn't stick with it, they just disbanded. They didn't get a chance to keep honing it like Voivod did, you know, to make it their identity.
And there's a definite Voivod influence on this. I mean, I remember getting like, oh, because that's one thing that kept me trained on to try to get past it when I first got the tape. Reminds me of Voivod in a weird way. The way, you know, how some of the riffs, a lot of note-based riffs play out. It kind of feels like Voivod in spirit, you know.
It's making me wonder, maybe this could be the difference between our opinions on this. Because as I said, I'm still struggling with some of that Voivod stuff from the 80s, you know. And Universe immediately, with the way the vocals and everything was interacting, made me think of Voivod.
Yeah.
I guess so. It's cool with this pick, by the way. We're literally looking at their whole discography. This is everything they did. 2 albums, an hour and 15 minutes. 2 unique thrash albums, in my opinion, though. Like, I think both on their own right stand alone, you know, from the time that they're in. And even looking back, kind of like at the bigger picture of thrash, I think they're fairly unique. Like, the self-titled, for example, it's still a fairly technical record. There's a lot of like cool intricate guitar solos. It's impressive how much they jam in, because the songs here are like between 2 and 3 minutes. Like, that's it. Like, even Power and Corruption, that's 1 minute and 46 seconds.
It's one of my favorites. I know Jim says
Absolutely.
the punk song. I love the faster songs on here. Just great, crushing.
That's what I ended up gravitating towards for sure. Was just the speed, the get in and get out kind of thing, and the fact that they're really bucking the writing like traditional songs. Like, it really is like they're writing like a punk band or like a crossover, a hardcore band. You know, there's not a verse, chorus, bridge, then, you know, hit them back with the chorus again. It's just like, you know, we're building up, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, in Power and Corruption, there's that cool like absolute power corrupts absolutely, and you're like, oh, is that the chorus? We're gonna hear that again? I hope we hear it again. We don't. They just that's the end of the song. Basically.
Power Mad did that on their album. Anyway,
but you don't like that one though.
I don't like that one. That's a band that I have. I don't know. That anyway, we'll get into that. Maybe that'll be another album club someday. We'll see.
I kind of want to check it out now. But it's just cool how they do that with songs where you think they're going to go one direction, or that they've introduced the chorus, and it's really not. It's just like an idea that they want to play with, and then they move on to the next thing. And it makes the songs flow just very energetically and in like a punk-like dynamic that I think keeps it engaging for me. I could see how someone could be turned off by that. Like, they're, you know, someone could be like, you know, nurture these ideas a little bit more. You can make it the song even better if you bring that back a second time. But to me, because the album flows so well together and it flows really from strength to strength, I never have that, you know, oh, I wish they could have done this again, or really expanded upon this idea for another minute and a half. I just like it's just they're powering forward through, you know, the songwriting like a fucking bullet through a head, basically. It's pretty cool. And just musically, they are tight. They are, but still clean sounding. Very much the opposite of what like a crossover band I think would be, which is one of their unique traits. Is, you know, I think musically and how they're writing the songs, it feels like a crossover act, but then how they're playing it, it's like a very technical, lean and mean thrash band, you know, like, and a band that's not on their first album. There's nothing sloppy here. It's the guitar work, as I already said, is just very tight and focused. The drumming and the bass work, phenomenal. I actually absolutely love the bass playing on this album. It really does a great job of building up to the choruses and just playing something really unique and, you know, impressive underneath. And the drums are right there with it. They're all perfectly in the pocket. And then I like the vocals by Phil on this one. I guess it is a kind of a punkier shout, but it just is it's just thrash enough for
more
me
aggressive.
That I enjoy it. Yeah, it doesn't have like the, I mean, it is nasally, but it's not like the back of the throat. I think it has enough of a snarl that I'm there for it, you know. Especially on tracks where he is doing like a punk delivery, like on Outburst, where he's just like just jibber jabbering over everything. It's is fucking awesome. I think his vocal performance sounds earnest and, you know, emotive, and it definitely helps grab my attention. And then we get to Universe, which is like, you can tell it's the same band. Absolutely can tell. Like, I think that's mainly with the instrumentation, but it's just such a step back. It really, it kind of, I really like it. Like, I do really enjoy it. It's just, it's tough to go from even like talking about the self-titled to talking about Universe, where the self-titled so much jumps out at you. At Universe, you have to kind of go find it, you know? Like, it's more of a journey, and you're digging for, you know, elements in the rough versus the self-titled that it's just all coming at you in 3D. What dictates Universe is the concept, though, to me. That is like the first and foremost thing you need to consider, is the fact that it is telling a story. It's about, you know, the birth of the universe to the very end and humanity's role in its destruction, I guess. And it's cool. It's slick. It's well done. I love how invested you can get into it, and how the music kind of helps to carry the concept. Like, in the beginning, it's like a little bit slower, and then there's the dinosaur song, which is
like an instrumental with like a measure worth of narration. And the lyrics are really good. I mean, you could tell
the lyrics really, are top notch.
They did big brain stuff, and there's smart lyrics.
As I said, they cross a line. Over here, we got the more smoother brain, like, you know.
Yeah, you got social aware type lyrics.
The typical thrash stuff. Yeah. And then over here, we're like,
I read
Discovery Channel.
I subscribe to Omni.
Yeah.
Or like Popular Mechanics. One of the two.
Yeah.
You know, I don't
know. You're a different kind of person over on the other side of the DBC line. And I do like, as I said, how the instrumentation just goes with the concept. And like during the human history sections, especially towards the war songs, it really picks up, and like the intensity picks up, and the guitar solos do as well. You know, I really think that the riff writing is very different, you know, like it all seems more
note based.
Like, yeah, I guess it's the way to describe it. It's like, even trying to think about specific riffs, I kind of have a tough time, you know? And that's kind of what I was saying when in the beginning, when I was like, oh, there were no riffs. I was like, when I'm trying to think of a riff from a song, I can't. But like on the self-titled, like I could pull a couple, you know. But yeah, on this one, it's like you're more so there for the concept and the journey that it takes you on, more so than to hear sick riffs, you know? And when I got onto that side of things, it really did open up for me, and I really do enjoy, I think, the lyrics and the concept overall, first and foremost, and then the fact that the instrumentation is just also so top-notch. I mean, you can't argue with the fact that they're all amazing players in their own right, and that they're all doing a good job of bringing this concept to life. It's just so cool that they all went all in on this kind of theme for an album. And I mean, I really do think they nail it. It's just, you're asking me to pit two albums against each other, and we're definitely comparing apples and oranges here to me. And, you know, what if I like apples better? So
yep,
it's kind of where I come at it.
Right on, Jim.
All this talk about food, man. What's going on? I'm getting hungry again. Wow. Oh, are we still on musicality and composition?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, man. You know, you know, Logan's right. You can definitely tell it's the same band, you know, but you can also, but Universe sounds like it's a record that came out about like 10 years after the debut, and not like, you know, 2 years. Because, you know, the riff writing is, you know, more experimental, you know, just shy of progressive, I think. The concept is absolutely not your typical thrash, you know, it's, the story of the universe versus all the typical socio-political stuff that's on the debut. Another point Logan brought up, which he's right on about. But I don't know, man. For some reason, I don't mind the kind of the disparate nature between the two records. I like the interplay between one and the other. I liked being surprised at what came after listening to the debut. Focusing on Dead Brain Cells. It's all the things we've already said. Just great bass lines, great drum work, a mixture of tempos, mid tempo, skank beats, cool guitar riffs, that weren't, just picked, weren't just tremolo. There's like, scales here or there, more like half scales kind of stuff. They dive more into the universe and kind of play them out and flesh them out a little bit more. But it's there, there's great triplet riffs like on Negative Reinforcement. There the vocals kind of spitting over a rolling double bass, and I like the vocal delivery there. You know what I mean? So it isn't like I don't like it everywhere. There's just a couple moments where I had to find something to differentiate the albums to talk about. But I actually really, really like the vocal performance, especially on that song, and on Deadlock as well. You got, the Vice is just pure thrashing fast madness. There's a lot of speed going on in there. Outburst was kind of weird. There's like this just straight up blues solo at the beginning. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? that kind of threw me a little bit, and that's on the debut. So, don't be fooled. There are surprises even amongst the crossover mayhem of the first album. It's still has a very unique sound. These guys weren't doing what everybody else was doing. They were really, really, pushing, punk and metal together in a way where you could hear both genres, with metal, the overarching, influence, of course, but, you could definitely see that these guys, were probably listening to, GBH as much as they were listening to, Slayer or whatever. But, you go into Universe and everything kind of gets amped up. You've got kind of a string skipping type riff on Infinite Universe, the closer, which I really love that one. That riff completely stood out to me. It was one of those things when I came back around to the song again, I was like, couldn't wait to hear that again. There's some odd time in there, which, I'm always appreciative of. Done in doses. If it's just odd time all the time, then it gets boring and you're like, it sounds like math. I don't want to listen to math, but
Right.
but used in doses, put like, in like surprising places in a song, used for effect. I love odd time signatures. There's, Rise of Man. There's more odd time in there, but what's cool is there's a couple times in that song where both guitars are doing different things, but they're not playing the same thing at all. They're playing different riffs. Like one may be playing like a whole note, and the other one's kind of like, doing like a repeated melody, and then they'll kind of switch or something. And that kind of like musicianship in like what is essentially a crossover metal band. It's not something you hear very often, and so it was a nice surprise. Even on Estuary, there's like moments there that sound to me like mid-period Megadeth. Just really quick, sound like Megadeth all over the place, but there was like just like a riff or two in there in Estuary off Universe that sounded that way to me. So they play around with different outside instrumentation. There's cool sound effects like on Phobos and Demos, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Like there's a lot of scale based riffs in that song, which are killer. They're always great for to add spice to a song, where you're not just playing the same old power chords over and over again or muting them. And you've got all that, but it does return back to the thrash, back to the pummeling. So it doesn't like lean in completely to like progressiveness. It's just there. It's just like some kind of special sauce that they embraced but throughout Universe, it's already hinted at to me. I hear it hinted at the debut, but there's definitely some Voivod love on Universe. Now they stay away from going full on um, jazzy piggy, but there is some of that there, and I mean, and why not, dude? I mean, they are a major Canadian metal band, um, uh, highly influential. There's people that don't listen to metal that listen to old Voivod. They just have that. They're so different and unique. I think it's really cool that they kind of lean into that a little bit. Not overly so, but enough to give color to their own songs. So I think that's really cool. It's kind of a wave and hails to their countrymen. But yeah, absolutely nothing to complain about. I mean, these guys are great, man. Every single one of them is a very skilled musician, and the first album is no joke, man. There's killer riffs on that one, but to take that and then amp it up and somehow still retain like your identity, it's really tough to do, especially when you go off the wall completely, like lyrically, and to a concept record. Not too many crossover bands did a a concept record as their second album. If anyone, I don't know anyone ever,
No.
any band did that. And especially not to the extent where they just completely jumped off the cliff into it. So, kudos for them, taking those kinds of risks, like Marty. I don't know if I had bought Dead Brain Cells in 87 and then bought Universe in 89. I think I might've been like Marty, like, what, WTF, man?
I was shocked. I didn't hate it, but I was shocked. Like, this is not what I expected.
I think it would have taken me some time. And but because there is, it is for me, just strictly going by riffs, like, and drums, like, it is a straight line for me in style. It's just like, it is a progression of skill there. I think it would have came around to it. You know what I mean? Even back then where I was a little more, well, let's say closed-minded, musically. I think
we all were. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it would have came around. So yeah, that's what I got to say on that.
It's a battle of the minds down there in New Orleans. Cat versus owner. Who will win?
All competing for chili.
Well, for me, okay, I'll start with the first one, the first album. I gotta say, the thing that really impressed me again this week, not just rocking out to it, but actually listening to what's going on. The longest song is the second song. It's just under 4 minutes. And there's a good chunk of these songs that are under 2 minutes. There's some that are only like a minute and a half long. The thing that impresses me when you start, we just got done doing an Napalm Death thing, and their short songs almost feel like a novelty to me. I stated that in the episode, but I listened to what Dead Brain Cells is doing. Their songwriting early on is top notch. The fact of it is they establish a feel, but they always in the middle of the track, no matter how long the track is, they break off into something different, a different tempo, a different, a little music break that's got some cool guitar lines. There's always a solo, which is funny. There's like these solos that aren't wanky. They're very tasteful solos. They know their scales. They're not just Kerry King and Dive Bomb and all that shit. They're playing something with feel and a hook, essentially. So that really stands out to me. The fact that they took so much concentration and concerted effort to make sure even these shorter songs go somewhere. They're not just a blurb. They feel like a complete song from beginning to end. And I don't always know where the song is going, which is exciting, but wherever they do go doesn't feel out of place from the beginning. So that to me is important and makes the debut really stand out as something special. If you're going to call it crossover, yeah, you don't hear that a lot, especially like early DRI stuff. They're just short little blurb songs, killer. But, they don't have a lot of time to really suss out a structure. And then you get to Universe. And it's like Jim said, everything kind of expanded. They have more time within the composition to do more. And they do. There's a lot of riffs in some of these songs. And again, they always take care and go someplace interesting. There's always, a feel change or a mood change. I will say Universe, there's more start-stop type stuff, you know, for transitions instead of a steady flow. They start and stop something and then go on to another part, which gives it more of a thrash vibe. You know, it's not riff salad per se. They everything ties together into a cohesive song. But obviously they grew exponentially in 2 years as musicians, and I think they wanted to distance themselves from whatever crossover connection they had to the first album. They just made a smarter record all the way around, and they did so with class. They did so with uniqueness, and the songs, each song is its own. Well, I mean, all the songs sound very, you know, cohesive. It doesn't sound like each song is different, but each song goes somewhere interesting. It holds my attention, even though, you know, I tend to focus on the vocals. And, you know, initially I wasn't jiving with the vocals, so I had to pay attention to the music. And the music is solid. First half of Universe is more subdued, I think, more growing. And then when you hit the midway point, the songs get more intense. You get a little bit of that early DBC vibe. You get a little bit more of the, you know, some speed here and there, not as fast as the debut, but still they build up, and it increases that tension again. And I think the way they structured the album conceptually, it, you know, you talk about the wars and the rise of man, and the songs sound more urgent. And it's kind of cool how they match the music with the concept of the lyrics. I kind of genius. And yeah, both songs, music and composition, top notch, 100% top notch. Again, the debut I think is more of a drums and bass achievement. The drummer's fantastic, and Phil's bass work is Steve Harris-esque. He's definitely, sounds like he's playing with a pick, but he's just very colorful, really great. Where the riff might be holding down a foundation or going down the neck, the bass lines will ascend. It's just cool point counterpoint shit that just really makes the song stand out. It makes short songs stand out. Shit like that becomes the hook of each song, which I think Universe has less moments like that, less hooky moments, although there are some breakaways with the bass and shit as well. But both albums are really well written, expert musicianship type stuff. Let's talk about the productions of both albums. Logan, while you're talking about that, I'm gonna go pee. I'll be right back.
Yeah, production wise, you know, I enjoy the production on both albums, and I think they're both kind of distinct and different, and they definitely cater to the focus that each album has. I mean, the production on the self-titled, for example, is pretty electric, I think, and very much focused on, you know, providing that low end and really kind of smoothing it all over. But then there's still a lot of energy, and especially in the guitar. Like, the guitar is very much forward, and it helps to push the song forward. And the bass and drums also are just right there pushing, you know, the track forward. There's just a lot of momentum here. And I think it feels more layered and a bit just livelier. And I'm not saying that the production on Universe feels dead, but it certainly feels more robotic and thought out and mechanical in execution. And I mean, the vocals, of course, are one of the big points too. Like, I personally really enjoy where the vocals fit in the mix on the debut, but I also see, you know, why they are what they are on Universe, because for that kind of album, they need to be like this monolith, you know, droid-like entity at the very top, just kind of hovering, narrating, you know, almost like it's a separate thing. And that's kind of how it feels like when it, you know, when it comes in, that you're talking to like this either robotic or watcher, like from the Marvel comics, like the watcher-like character in Universe. And the production fits, you know. It's just all about preference. Like, do you prefer the energetic and the punchier production of the debut, or are you okay that the, you know, Universe feels a bit more withdrawn and I don't know, doesn't have as many like dynamic, you know, moments as I think the debut has. But that could just be because the instrumentation kind of feels like that too. I mean, overall, Universe is just a lot more in the pocket than the self-titled album, and the production kind of mirrors that. So at the end of the day, I mean, I do enjoy both, but I can't help but prefer the dynamic and energetic feel of the self-titled more. So, and good timing. I gotta let a cat out.
Jim.
Production. Yeah, man, production's great, dude. You know, we've already talked about it. You know, so I don't have to go off the rails here. You know, this is a thrash record. You know, thrash is in your face as a style. You know, and the debut perfectly embodies that. You know, you can hear all the instruments right up front, just as you would as if you were seeing them play. You know, the bass is right up front, the guitar is right up front. The drums are right where they need to be. A great, like, very organic kick sound and snare sound. The cymbal work is really cool on both albums. And so if I had to give like one minor criticism, I'd say I'd like for the cymbals to be a little bit louder, because there's some cool stuff that he's doing there. But yeah, makes the tom sound on the drum and the double bass all make up for that. Very minor nitpick. Everything is, Logan had a great way of saying it. It's kind of sounds robotic, but it goes along with the concept. There's definitely, a very, clean and precise sort of like production on Universe, but, with the concept, with, the song structures themselves, not just the lyrics. I think it's kind of perfectly matched. It wouldn't have sounded the same if they'd been more raw and written songs like they did on Universe. If they'd kept the production exactly the same as they did on Dead Brain Cells, then it may have sounded a little off, not as convincing, of a cosmic sort of, concept and theory behind everything they were trying to do on that second album. If they hadn't tried to also, have the production serve, what they were trying to express. So I feel like it was good choices all around, to kind of tweak the knobs a little more in a different way and a more clean way, if you will, on Universe. That's not something I usually say. I'm always more about the dirtier sounds. I'm just saying for that album, it made more sense. I'm still having trouble even now deciding which record I like better. I think that just means I need to have both, right?
There you go.
But it's a good problem to have, when you're kind of torn like this. But I think that the production choices on both records, though, again, you can totally, for me, I can totally tell it's the same band on both records. They may have gone off the wall with, in comparison to the debut with the vocals and, with some of the more intricate aspects of the writing, but the sound to me, put the vocals aside, guitar, bass, drums is very similar. It sounds like DBC on both records. So, just tweaked enough to serve, what they were trying to, put in the minds of their listeners. So, but yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I do want to call it such a great comment from Tim earlier. Like, we were talking about maybe and the reasons why, DBC, didn't push into the thrash as successfully as others. And I do think he's right. I think it might have even been the name, because when I first heard DBC, I thought it was like a punk band. I saw even the cover, to me looks like a very punk cover. It kind of looks like a GBH cover, to be sort of. And it wasn't until I read about them later, I'm like, oh, okay, they're actually a thrash band. So I think that might have been something, if someone hadn't, taken the time to explore a little bit more, and if you were just like a straight metalhead, and especially back in the 80s, there was more of a division between the two groups. You may have been just like, no, I'm not even going to bother, so might have been, another thing to think about. But anyway, just a great comment of Tim. So I just wanted to bring that out. So cool.
And is their name, to that point, is their name actually DBC? Is that kind of like
well, it's short for dead
by?
brain. It's short for dead brain cells. It's on the cover of both the records. You know,
that is a very punk thing to do. Just that.
Yeah, it is.
DBC, like, you know,
and archives like it on their main page it lists them as DBC. You know,
well, that's what made me realize that, because like looking them up in the various on archives and other music websites, I had to search DBC, not Dead Brain Cell. So
yep.
Yeah. That kind of threw me off.
That's their logo, right? So yeah.
Yep. All right, for me, production. Yeah, we've covered it. To me, I think the debut is a bit more of an organic sound, although they do have the guitar tone, even though there's two guitar players, it's not oversaturated with gain. So when you have two guitars working together, they're both really filled up, very dense sounding, you're going to lose your bass a bit. But here they wanted to make sure that bass tone was coherent. So I think they chose for a thinner guitar tone. It's still a good sound together. It sounds like them. Their guitar sound, their whole overall, what they do sounds like Dead Brain Cells, and the way it's produced highlights that. So yeah, the debut to me is a bit more organic, more bass guitar dominant. You move over to Universe, again, far more clinical. Like you said, I like the droid-like when you said droid-like, and that's really cool. It's almost like a computer program or a computer from Star Trek, narrating, the growth of a galaxy or whatever. And it is a really, again, it plays to the concept, but Universe, a lot slicker. The gain on the guitars is dialed back a bit further, but in doing so, they also drop the bass. You can still hear the bass tone, but it's hidden in the mix a bit more. So the guitars can take more of a center stage, and they opted for just a cleaner sound, and it suits the album and the concept perfectly. It really does. It doesn't sound thin or weak. The whole thing has a feeling of professionalism to it. It sounds like a well-produced record, in spite of, being a bit thinner than the debut. Just to highlight a slight change, their musicianship has improved, and so has their production. They probably got a bigger budget. Who knows? But yes, Kev, they did. They just released 2 singles, which are available on Spotify in 2024. So apparently there's only 2 original members left. Two of the other guys died. One guy died in 2019 at 61, and the guitar player died in the 90s. Yeah. So, but they're back. They're putting out song again. I just started listening to one of the tracks. It doesn't sound like the same band, but which is to be expected. How many years have passed and you got new members? It's just going to be that way. But yeah, production wise, both of them are great. Let's talk about least favorite songs. Logan.
Yeah, for DBC first. 13 songs, 36 minutes. Really just, as I said, flows from strength to strength. I really don't have a least favorite track. I think they all deserve to be there. And even the ones that I'm not going to mention, just because, I'm not going to mention 13 songs, but even the ones that I don't mention, it's just because maybe I haven't had enough time with it, or I've been, focusing on other tracks. There's definitely a killer moment, I think, on every single song. Like, there's something that gets my ears perked up, and I'm like, whoa, let's play that again, The ones that really kind of catch my attention, right from the first 3 tracks, Monument and Lies are
Lies is
highlights.
anthemic.
Yeah. Monument has one of those like killer sections that you think is going to be a chorus, but they really only play it like the one time, like, save me, I'm a victim of a mortal life. Like, I like the lyrics actually across the board, even on the self-titled. I think the lyrics are really good.
Yeah.
And just the riff that pushes that song forward is phenomenal. Lies is the anthemic, I think, almost more traditional thrash song, which, got to mention that. Power and Corruption, I absolutely adore. I mean, you guys, we've already talked about it. It's got that punk energy. It really does feel like that kind of song. And then it's got that anthemic, Absolute Power Corrupts Absolutely right there in the middle before segueing to the next section. So kind of love those in the beginning. Towards the end, I already mentioned Outburst for me is a highlight. I just love how calm it opens up how did you describe it, Jim? Was it bluesy or something you were saying? Because it opens up very much not like other songs, and then it goes just fucking bananas for the rest of the track with, I think, my favorite vocal performance from Phil. And then getting closer to the end of the album, Terrorist Mind is another highlight for me, probably my favorite song on the album. Yeah, great stuff. And then for Universe, honestly, just like the self-titled, you got to take them all. I mean, especially on this one, they all belong. It's a concept album. I don't think you can scratch a single one. They all serve a purpose. To me, they all fit. I don't have a least favorite for this one either, which is pretty impressive. 10 songs, 38 minutes, so a bit more, space and ability to kind of to write with it. For me, my preference is when it starts to pick up, which is starting around the narration of humanity, which let's see, Rise of Man, up through Phobos and Deimos, Phobos and Deimos. Yeah, just between in that spread. So it's like Rise of Man, Human's Child, Estuary, and then Phobos and Deimos. There's just such a cool dynamic of incessant energy balanced with a more like mid-tempo, but it's really demonstrating the chaos that they want to with this concept of mankind becoming more and more destructive. And my favorite track on it is the Phobos and Deimos song, which once again the lyrics are great. I mean, this one line: through technology, man can now annihilate everything on Earth, a grenade in the hand of a child that's been violent since birth. Oh yeah, I like the whole concept of the album, and the lyrically it flows, and instrumentally it does too. So I wouldn't take a single track off. One more highlight: the Exit the Giants track, which is about the dinosaurs and the extinction event. Anything about dinosaurs, I'm all on board for. So that one also is worth a mention. Insane guitar solo on that one.
Yeah. All right, Jim.
Cool. Yeah. Favorites. First of all, totally agree with Logan. There's no duds on either album. This band, if there's one thing you can say about them, they're very consistent in their quality. The quality on both records from start to finish is always there. But I do have some highlights, and for me, Deadlock, the opener on the debut, it's everything you want. It completely announces what they're all about. It's killer thrash. It's got a very powerful chorus. It just really gets you going. Monument, the track right after that, that's great drum work on there.
Not to interrupt you, but the Deadlock, the beginning, that lead up intro, that longer intro at the beginning of Deadlock, it's very epic how the guitar lines come together and very like something huge is coming. It's fucking awesome. Great.
Intro. It's moments like that tell you like this is more than just a crossover record, because there's just some straight like invisible orange metal moments on this record, and that's one of them, and that's not the only one. I felt like that. I'm like, man, that's like a classic, like anthemic metal feel, like of a riff of an intro. Like they do that kind of stuff, or maybe they'll put it in the middle of a song or something like that. It's still though the punk / hardcore influences there, like this is still very much a metal band, a thrash metal band. That is where they live, and when they embrace that like fully, like it really elevates everything. So it's a great point. There's many moments spread out across both records that harken to that. So, but yeah, Monument. I love there's a triplet mid-paced riff that definitely reminds me of like Dimension Hatros era Voivod, which is cool. That actually this came out the same year as Killing Technology, so but anyway, that's a great thing. Lies, I'm with Logan on that one. I love that song. 1 minute 45 in, just a total headbanger riff, and that line, like, you know, all you ever tell are lies, lies, all you ever tell are lies. Yeah, that song's awesome, man. I really love that. You know, Tempest for an instrumental, man. Tempest is a great instrumental. It is not boring. It's not one of those like that you're just like click past. That song is very much so tasty riffs start to finish. So I wouldn't recommend passing that one up. Public Suicide. That I actually got here. Cool classic metal start. That song has that just, you know, rising, you know, stand to your feet, you know, melody line and riff together. Just a killer intro to that song. Also, phenomenal bass lines. Negative Reinforcement, one of my favorites on the whole record. I love the triplet bass thrash riff there, and I mentioned earlier that fast spitting vocal, and the rolling double bass. Like it's to me, it's all there. Negative Reinforcement is a must listen to on this one. Then I know Tim said this is one of his favorites, but actually I really love the song Trauma X. You know, Trauma X has a lot of variety riff wise going on here, probably maybe even the most on the whole record on the debut, and it has overall just a dark tone to it. You're not they just kind of, you know, pummel you in your face. There's something a little more, you know, brooding about that song, and maybe it kind of like gives you a glimpse of what's to come on the Universe, the next album over. And then, you know, getting into Universe, you know, Heliosphere, it's the second track. Great drum work on that one. It has kind of a crawling tempo that sort of picks up and keeps moving like faster and more aggressive. So I like the build out of that song. Primordium, besides being just a killer song title, the riffs have a very unique and kind of strange arrangement. Just really stood out to me every time the song came back around. I was like, oh, you know, that's really unusual, but in a good way. There's once you get halfway through that song, you're going to hear the double bass, and the way that it works over the guitars and the way the guitars work with it in turn, it's really strange. It's not the kind of like riff that you would want to hear, or not want to hear. I was going to rephrase. It's not the kind of riff that you would typically hear with double bass behind it. But for some reason it just works. It's very, very unusual. So I highly recommend Primordium for that reason. A very cool moment on that record. And then at 145, there's just a pure headbanging riff. It makes you want to thrash out, and there's a killer solo. So again, they go right back to the straight awesome metal, you know, and they don't ever leave you hanging. You know, like you said, Logan, every song has a moment. You know what I mean? Like, man, you know, awesome. You know, I mean, and that's what it's all about, right? We don't, you know, hey man, just as much as the next guy, I like to be lulled into like, you know, numbness by, you know, atmospheric black metal or, you know, ambient, you know, stuff like that. But, you know, sometimes I just want to thrash out, and you know, Primordium is a song for that. So I got to call out Rise of Man. Halfway through that one, there's this kind of like almost odd times. It's like not quite odd time, but almost. It's like, and they play these half scaled note based riffs. And the bass line's doing a counterpoint the whole time. The bass line's doing its own thing, which I love that. It's so cool. Like interesting riff and then interesting bass line. It's like your ears don't know what to pay attention to because there's cool stuff going on.
The bass is such an underutilized instrument in metal, but when it is, it's special. It shows that the instrument can add so much to a song.
Oh, 100% agree. You know, you got the right, a bass player just, you know, going off doing their thing. It can really, you know, amp up, you know, everything to a 10. And Rise of Man, it absolutely does. And they also have on the way out of that song, the guitar players are doing separate parts that work together. And and that's what carries it out. And so you've got something really interesting to close it as well. So those are all my favorites from both records. Oh, and I already mentioned Infinite Universe, but I'll say it again. That's the last song on Universe. Very, very cool closer. That I already talked about that one earlier, so I won't go into it. But yeah, so a lot to love here. You know, we have 2 albums to talk about, so we have to go through a lot. But you're not going to hurt yourself going front to back on these records. So,
all right. Well, I wrote a dissertation on DBC in my notes, so I'm just going to kind of stick to the favorites. But we'll start with the first album. We talked about Deadlock. I love that epic, how the guitar lines come together and this ascending riff. It really introduces the album perfectly. It shows we're not just a crossover band. We've got a lot of ideas, and we can emotionally manipulate the listener into our world, and they do so really well on Deadlock. You know, Phil's bass work is exceptional. Fantastic lead and riff work by Eddie Shahini and Gary Ouellette. Jeff St. Louis on here. He's a fantastic drummer. I mean, his performance on here makes this material a weapon with his savage speed and jazz inspired fills. He's great drummer. That's an obvious favorite. Lies is a favorite, very anthemic and lethal in the speed and intensity. Phil's bass work again jumps off the page to really bring the mayhem. I love his tone and how the bass sits within the mix. Great song. Power and Corruption is another favorite one. Here's a track where it's kind of teetering on blast beats. It's a complete burner. The middle section, though, it explores more space to explore layered guitar parts and memorable riff runs. It's short and furious, and they pack a lot of power into 1:49. It's a lot. Tempest, great instrumental. I'm going to skip over that. Outburst, heads down and banging when the intro solo line fades away. Complete ripper. MIA, another favorite. I like the speedier ones on here. Perhaps the catchiest track on the album, thanks to that tasty bass line during the slower section. He also, Phil's voice, he exudes a bit more emotion in this song as he left himself some space in the lyrics to emote more effectively. There's so many words. He's like, it's kind of like what Jim was talking about, the punk delivery. Terrace Mind, another perfectly sculpted track. The snare roll and Phil's matching it with vocals is a very effective swell of intensity in this one. Not a song on here that I would say is bad. We get into Universe. I gotta say, the lyrics. The Genesis explosion, creator of expanding space, compressed matter with the power to detonate, an infinity of nothing to expand, the Genesis explosion, creator of the human race. You know right away you're into something a lot different than the socially aware nature of the debut. The lyrics are really well considered here, and they almost read like a textbook, but it's funny how that line alone, it fits so perfectly with the riff. He's just kind of talking over it in kind of a rhythmic way. It fits, and it becomes a hook. Heliosphere is a favorite. The excitement that DBC crafted in '89 is in the form of ever-changing note-dominant riffs on this album. I love the start, stop, and fluidity of the guitar work towards the end of the track. There's an underlining disjointed feel to this and the rest of the album that proves the band has grown a lot as musicians, which we've discussed. Primordium. Love the musical moment during the chorus. It says, breaking up the atoms by electrical shock, molecular prosperity, fragments recombined in a molecular lock. How he says that along without getting tongue twisted is it's awesome. There's a synchronicity here that acts as an odd, though very effective hook. It's very cool. Exit the Giants is essentially the instrumental with the narration over it. It's a cool, like the on Tempest, I believe, on the album before. Their instrumentals are fine. They're so good at writing these songs. The music actually gets a little bit more complex to make up for the fact that there's no lyrics, but it all just works, and they take you through all these feelings and transitions. It makes sense. Rise of Man's another favorite. The song eventually, there's an eventual urgency to the track. It suits the lyrical content, and then, of course, there's no overlooking the jazz feel and the drum work on this track for sure. It adds a lot of color and motion to a very complex piece of music. Estuary is another banger. It's probably the most intense track on the album. All the elements that make the band great are in this song. Awesome. Humanity's Child, atypical and great riffs in the intro. Speed, again, like I said, the second half of this album is more intense than the first, but they bring it back around with Universe at the end. Phobos and Demos is probably my favorite track on the album. It's more musical connections to the debut with those fantastic solos. That's one thing. In the first half of the album, there's no real ripping solos. It's more subtle and subdued guitar lines that add a nice feeling of melody. Here, there's just a solo, which it kind of points back to, hey, these guys can still rip, but tastefully rip. Yeah, I mean, again, there's nothing here that's out of place or wrong. Nothing stands out as a faux pas. The narration on Rise of the Giants or whatever is odd. I almost wished it wasn't there, but it's there and it doesn't bug me. It's fine. Judgment, final thoughts, and who won? Which one would you choose if you had to pick one? Logan.
All right. Well, so I have been keeping score with the chat so far, and I think Daryl voted Universe. I believe Metal Kev voted Universe too. So
yep, good
for you guys. Yeah, Judgment, final thoughts. Both are impressive and unique thrash albums for their own reasons, and both on very distinctive ends of the thrash, cosmos of the 80s. Like the self-titles are very much almost the crossover. I still consider it very much a technical thrash album, but it with a crossover.
The shorter songs and the vocals, it's got a crossover vibe.
It has a vibe, but
it's just minor.
The way the instrumentation sits with it, it's technical, tech thrash for me. But that vibe makes it very unique, and it kind of sweetens the deal for me. I like how intense it is, how fast it is, how many ideas are thrown at you so quickly. You go from track to track, and it's just each song is different and has a different highlight, and but all still feels on the same album by the same band, and it comes off very cohesive. And it's tough to get to two albums and have a week to spend with both of them, and have one which is so immediate and so aggressive and so in your face, and the other which is like almost the opposite of that, trying to just be more, let's massage that deep tissue of your cranium, let's pretend to be an episode of a Discovery Channel or History Channel.
Shuffle these rocks around.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, I'm going to be like, fuck yeah, the speedy, intense thrash one is my favorite. That's the one that jumps out at me. It's just like, look at me. That's still the one I'm going to choose, But that's not because the Universe isn't awesome. Like, I really enjoy the execution and the thought that goes into the concept, and just how devoted and dedicated they are to pulling off this idea of, narrating humanity's, beginning to end. And like, really, it kind of is all about humanity, because even in the beginning of, the birth of the universe, it mentions humanity in that line. So it's not just like the universe outside of humanity, but we're still very much the focus of it. And dinosaurs are only given a footnote, a soundbite, if you will.
Yeah.
Bummer. But it still works, and it still, if it fits, it almost suffers a little bit of being too ahead of its time for me. It fits with the Voivod, and actually it makes me think of Cynic a little bit, like the Focus era Cynic with
Fair.
the vocoder,
which is another album that struggled when it came out. It really is. People hated that shit when it came out.
It's one of those where I kind of still struggle with it too. I prefer Trace and Air just because it feels more cohesive. But yeah, vocally, that's kind of where it sits for me, and even musically a little bit. It just struggles to really come out and grab my attention as much. It's one of those where I really need to be put in the mood. So it's like you have these two albums where one is like, you don't need to be in the mood. It'll find you. And the other one, you got to really kind of search for it. I'm leaning towards the self-titled one. So for rankings, or for a rating, the self-titled is about an 8.5 for me. That's where it kind of settles. But Universe is still around an 8. So these are both successful albums. It's just my vote is DBC.
Jim, time to choose.
Man, I don't want to. This is not fun for me, because I really do like both. I think that if we had reviewed these albums at different times, I think I would have went with the first one because I typically want the more aggressive thing. I want the more raw, the dirty, the more in your face, and all that. But having to listen to them back and forth, back to back like this, that's what made it so difficult because there's a depth to the songs on Universe that I couldn't deny, and I kept feeling myself drawn to. So, man, but I don't know. It's like I feel like if I say one, then I'm saying I'm not going to get the other. But I would say that if I was in a store, I would pick up the debut first because I don't like picking up later albums before earlier ones. If I like both, you know what I mean? I'm going to pick up the earlier one first. That's what I do. But I do think that if I was picking up both, I'd be listening to Universe more. I feel like there's a little bit of depth to the musicianship and stuff like that, where every time I listen to it, I hear something different and something new that kind of draws me in. So that's where I'm going to land on it. If I was in a store, I'd pick up the debut first because that's what I always do. I don't buy. If I like two records of a band, I'm going to pick up the earlier one and then get the other one. But I think that long term, sitting on my shelf, the Universe would get more spins. So, and
I'm surprised, TJ, that you like Universe more than the debut. To be honest, I don't know if you checked them both out, TJ, but yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Awesome.
Sorry.
And as for my normal ratings, to me, these I want both of these, and I'd probably purchase both of these, and I will be getting them.
Right on. Well, for me, I thought the decision was easy. I had in my mind what I was going to pick right away until I, refamiliarized myself with the Universe and realized how great of a record it is. It made the decision tougher, but when it all boils down, I mean, one of them is a 9.5, the other one's a 9. And the 9.5 for me is a debut. I just think that record, it's such an ass kicker and it's tasteful. It's so well written. Even early on, in spite of, their influences, they're in Canada. They got a touch of punk influence in them. They have their own sound. Phil's voice is unique and it gets even more unique as the second one hits, and then they get a bit more of a Voivod flavor, but it's still them, and it's still them pushing some pretty serious boundaries for 1989. They're doing some unique stuff. The double vocals, the narration, it's interesting. It's an interesting concept that, a lot of bands might look at the idea on paper, but not pull through with it. But they did here. They went from a crossover shouting style to this, which is completely different. But, for me, it's a debut. Thankfully, I don't have to live without either one of them. But if I had to pick one, I'd have to go with the debut. It's just, after all these years, it's such a short burner. I've listened to it a million times and it still impresses. It still gives me that feeling of intensity and urgency. It's just a great record, and Universe is as well in its own way. It's still Dead Brain Cells. It still sounds like a unique, but it's even more so. It's just more so of that. It was a bold statement, I think, for the time, and they should be commended further for that. And the fact that they didn't, jump off the paper and impress a wider audience, I get it, but it's a bummer. It's a bummer because it would have been interesting to see what they did with album 3. I do have, I should have pulled it, a CD that they put out a while ago with some unreleased tracks. They're not as good, but I haven't listened to that much, so I can't really remember. But I just remember hearing them say, "Oh, it's cool, I have this, but I prefer the first two." But yeah, so for me, it's the self-titled for sure. And there it is. And before we depart, we've got some unfinished business here. It is Logan's pick for next week.
Yep. Let's see. So I was definitely toying with a death metal pick because I think death metal is needed, but it's also the early part of the summer, which is really the only good part of the summer that exists for me down here in New Orleans. So before it gets too hot and oppressive and just soul sucking, I wanted to jam an album that damn it, Tony, I got to pick something else.
I can't wait. It's coming. It's going to happen eventually, Tony. It's coming.
It's coming. But for now, we're going with a perfect like outdoor summer album, grilling album. Just I don't know, fun vibe album. You guys know this? This is Killer Attack.
Oh yeah.
You've heard of Killer Attack, huh?
Yeah.
I have not.
Oh, we have the back. There's the name right over there. So this is their self-titled debut from 2010. Norwegian, kind of interesting, unclassifiable, like black metal, black and roll kind of band. So
you're gonna have to put the spelling and the name of it in the chat because I'm not gonna.
I got you.
Be able to decipher all that. And before we jump, I just want to say, have you got your heavy metallurgy patch yet for your Battle West?
I do have mine. Yep, got it in the box. So.
They turned out good. They look good. I still need to get out to all of our contributors. I have not done so yet, but I will do so. Yeah, it does look like a Baroness cover. You're correct. Yeah, check that out. Links in the description to our merch channel and show notes. Friday is Dennis from Analog Archives. We're going to be talking about albums that we think rip from beginning to end, and it can be in any genre, metal or industrial or punk. Just albums that kick our ass from start to finish is going to be the topic. Nice and easy. Should bring in some people that are curious what we think. I forgot to bring you one, TJ practice. I'll bring one Monday. But yeah. So that's it. Is you guys have anything to add? What's coming up on the Metal and Beer Snob? Is there anything coming that we need to know about?
Well, now probably another month before my next video. But no, check out the acid bath one. I'm gonna try to do get back into doing something at least twice a month. But words are cheap. Also, there's a review on heavy metallurgy. I talk about a flock named Seagulls, a flock named Murder. I mean, check that out.
Yep.
It's a sick album if you enjoy atmospheric black metal, post metal.
It was a good album. I was surprised. Yeah.
See? Yeah.
And other show notes. Today we dropped a review. Simon from Explosive Action did a review of the new Jade album. So check out that review. And Jim, what you got coming up? Anything going on?
Everything's quiet in my front, though. I do suggest everyone go and listen to that new Skin record. Oh my God, that thing
rules. Yeah, Jurgen covered it on the channel. Go watch his review. Great review. Good to see him back on the channel.
Oh my God, it is God level thrash.
It's like Necros Christos married Overkill or Megadeth. Yeah,
I love that. Yes, Necros Christos married Overkill. That's right on, man. With a slight bit of Megadeth. Yes.
Yep.
Yep. Wow, you just said it all. That's exactly. Which, if that doesn't make you smile, I don't know what will.
Love those Necros Christos vocals. They just seem so weird with that style, but it works. It works perfectly.
They do. It's so weird. Like it makes the thrash heavier, and the thrash makes the voice stronger somehow. Like it's really cool.
Yep. Well, cool. That's it, everybody. It's been a pleasure having you all join us on this discussion, and please go check out these old 2 classic albums from a band that was fantastic. And apparently they're spinning again. So hopefully we'll see something a little more substantial from Dead Brain Cells coming here in the near future. But we'll be here on Heavy Metallurgy to maybe tell you about that if it happens. And until then, take care. We'll see you Friday.